that is a great problem to have if we're ranking number one for injury lawyer, personal injury, car accident, whatever, and you're getting a bunch of unqualified leads coming through because I promise you the good ones are coming with that as well. So yes, to your point, it's a great problem to have if Google views you as such an authoritative presence that you're collecting a lot of that stuff as well.
Sharp strategies, sweet success. Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success. This is your host, Tiffany Swedensky, and today I am here with Will McCreight. He and I have known each other, gotten to know each other very well over the last few weeks. I think we've known at least of each other for a few years now. And he works for Blue Shark Digital and is just a great resource. Talk about SEO, digital marketing, online marketing. Blue Shark also helps a few of my clients with their websites, and I really appreciate working with them. So I'll turn it over to Will so he can finish out his introduction. But thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Echo, enjoy working with you as well. Obviously, my name is Will. My title is technically a senior account executive at Blue Shark, but I've been with the agency for about 7 years or so now. I actually started out in one of our teams internally, focused on link building, Google Business Profile stuff, and then spent a couple years as one of our senior level strategists where I got to really work as that day-to-day point of contact for the firms that we partner with to make sure that we are successful, but also looking down the line to figure out how we can build upon that. And because of what I was able to do with those firms, I was able to step into my current position, which is our senior account executive. Really what my goal whenever I'm talking to somebody is to figure out, are we potentially a fit? And if so, how do we make sure that we have the strategy to be successful? I've also had the privilege of being able to speak at probably about a little over a dozen conferences and events over the past year and change, which Tiffany is where we first met. And I actually have a funny story about that because I think our first interaction was when I sent you a message on LinkedIn at the GLM summit with Ben and Brian, and you had left or you were out of the room or something. And I messaged you because somebody who stood up and asked a question about like, hey, where'd that woman go who said this and this? I think I need to get in touch with her. And I was like, hey, you got to come back. But I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, gosh, it's kind of hard to remember all of the past summits that I've been to because honestly, there are so many. And this year, it's one of my goals to go to more of these events. And I'm going to be at one next week. And I think actually this episode might actually air later today because my team is just so quick on the podcast. So next week, I'll be speaking at the AI for PI Expo in Orlando. And then I have a few other events that I'm planning to attend this year and really looking forward to. And it's just such a great place to like meet people, talk ideas. Cause like when you're in your office at your desk, you're working and you're not really thinking, and those events are kind of a good time for thinking, at least for me. Not to make it about events and stuff like that. But one question I wanted to ask you, just because I've been thinking about it myself, but like, how do you promote you, Will? Like, what are all the ways that you promote yourself? And like, how do people notice you if you know that?
I think typically people notice my height when I'm at conferences. Doesn't show too much across the Zoom screen, but you may hear people call me the tall guy or something when we're out there. For me, when I'm at conferences and events and stuff like that, I think that whatever we're looking to offer is just to be helpful. So I would like to think that people notice us because they maybe see what we do or they ask questions, and we place a lot of pride in just, if nothing else, giving good, real answers to those questions and trying to help people whether they're with us or not. And then there's just that element of familiarity where if you go to enough things, eventually you're just going to start running into people that you already saw, and it kind of builds that way. But LinkedIn, all that stuff, I guess just being around.
Yeah. It's important to like show up across all of these channels because I feel like I see a lot of people kind of trying to make their career from social media only. Like, and that's not impossible, because I've certainly built up a little following on LinkedIn. But at the same time, like the power of showing up in person, talking to people face to face, hearing their problems, and having them in a space where they're also thinking about marketing, it's just so powerful. And like, I feel like it just makes a deeper impression with people. And
I
sometimes you can
agree.
solve people's problems just right then and
I
there. So
agree. And I mean, a lot of the people listening to this, a lot of the first things that we talk about and that firms start doing is a lot of the grassroots stuff. And I think that's the same approach. I'd actually be curious to hear your thoughts as well, because a very common question that we get is about social media, right? And like, should I be doing social media? And usually my answer is, you know, you should only be doing it if it's something that you would do, whether or not it brought you the leads that you're hoping it will. And that's just what we found is like the firms that actually like it, they're passionate about it, they're going to do it consistently and do it well. The firms that think that it's something where you go on, you post a bunch for 2 weeks, then never again, not really how it works. I think maybe that's similar to what we're talking about as well.
yeah. Well, and let me ask you this, but like what are like the problems that attorneys are having or people are having that they're like what are the questions people asking you? Like what do you see happening out there?
Yeah. Well, usually if we're speaking to somebody that we aren't working with and trying to assess that partnership, it's because they either feel like they're not getting what they should be getting out of their existing partnership, or they feel like there's opportunity to leverage growth through their digital presence. So when we're looking at bringing on a new firm, a lot of what we're trying to assess is like, are you performing up to the way in which you could through your digital presence? And is it even valuable, right? Because if it's a situation where there's nothing that we can do to step in and improve things, there's no point in partnering up, and we'll be transparent about that if we don't feel like we could step in and do a better job for whatever reason. The firms that we do partner with, I think that AI search is one of the biggest things these days, and I don't know that it's more of a that it's as much of a problem as it is an opportunity, but that is definitely kind of that next iteration of search in the future, and a lot of that's already there. So it's typically some mix of lack of performance or figuring out how do we strategically build upon this performance if we don't have the approach in place in order to do so.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's still Google dominant, or do you feel like search is spread out a little bit more? And I feel like it would have to be like at least a little bit compared to
Mm,
3 or 4 years ago.
yeah,
I saw a LinkedIn post today where people were discussing like how much superior Gemini and Claude is over ChatGPT. And it's like, am I behind the times still using ChatGPT? It's kind of weird to think about.
yeah, that's a great question as well. Historically, Google has been so dominant to the point that there has really been no other factors in play. Now, over the past couple of years, and really like the past year specifically, what we're seeing is that Google is still the overwhelmingly dominant force, but there are other players in the space that are making strides that have not been made in the past. And what we're seeing is that it's likely to continue. It's hard to say what that mix will end up being, but even when you look at AI search, people look at it oftentimes as almost grouping all of these different platforms, like you mentioned, together. And the reality is they're all separate things. And while there's plenty of overlap, not just with Google and AI search, but Google and all of these different platforms, there's also things that are different. So it's kind of that ever changing space of being where the conversions are at right now, but you need to be incorporating where the conversions are also at right now, but maybe where they may continue to grow and be a year from now. And it's kind of that proactive approach to it combined with where they're at right now that usually is what we're seeing the best results with. We actually just had someone reach out to us yesterday who let us know they got a big case through ChatGPT, right? So there it's here now, but it will continue to grow as well from what we've seen.
Well, and I at the beginning of the year, one of my clients, we were looking at like their marketing sources and overwhelmingly like they were being attributed to organic search. And like halfway through the year, I implemented some systems that would basically look at all of those organic search leads and assign a more specific marketing source. And at the end of the year, our sources were more varied. It was Google business listings specific by specific location. It was AI search. It was traffic from legal directories. And basically, we took 50% of what we thought was coming through organic search and just got more precise with how we were tracking. And it's just really spread out, which I think as marketers, like, I feel like we should all be appreciating this because Google had like effectively a marketing monopoly. Like everyone had to do what Google wanted. It was kind of ridiculous almost looking back. It was like, would this make Google mad? Like, should we do this? Would Google care? And we're talking about changes to the homepage and whatnot. And it's just like, end of story, they don't. And now these days it really doesn't matter as much as it used to, which is nice.
Yeah, and look, you still don't want to piss Google off. They are a nightmare to deal with. But yeah, there's more things at place. And that element of tracking really is so important because even if we look at it in its most basic form of like what's coming in through an organic search, right? A true representation of a lead through organic search isn't somebody who Googled the firm name because they knew they were looking for you and then they clicked on your website. And because of that process, it counts as an organic search. Really, what you want to understand are what people are finding us that weren't specifically looking for us. And then one step further as well, like out of these keywords that we're ranking for, which ones are actually converting? Because there is value to site traffic and stuff like that. But ultimately, the approach I try to preach to people is that we need to understand not just the visibility that we have, but the visibility that is actually impactful. And that's why you're so great as well. When we're able to understand that data, we can understand how to be smarter with what we are using our resources on in the future, targeting that stuff that's likely to convert versus the things that maybe look great on a traffic sheet or bringing in tons of calls, but the calls aren't converting.
I don't really have like a firm question around this, but I'd like to like pick your brain about the damn directories. Because as a fractional, like I'm managing people pretty much. That's 90% of what I do these days. And I'm always managing people to update directories, check this listing, audit. It's just an ongoing project for every law firm I work for. And it's so frustrating. Can you speak to that? Like, it's crazy. How necessary is it? Should we do paid ones? What do you got on directories,
They
basically?
are a nightmare. And I'll say that's part of the thing that I love about Blue Shark is we have individuals that you would work with that are in each department in like area within search as a whole. And so we have our entire team, we call them our off-page SEO team. And this is one of the things, one of the handful of things that they focus their time on entirely. What we see is that it's very situational. Now, those directories love telling you that they will put your name somewhere for 700 bucks a month. But I encourage people to, when they see these emails come through or we're looking at directories, step one is like, what's the end goal out of it? Is it to be listed on there? Is it to say that we have a badge or is it to get a link? Whatever the case may be. Even a lot of those paid ones, you can obtain a lot of the SEO value in theory through the link that oftentimes you don't have to pay to get. But from there, there's a lot of different factors. The directories and the value associated to the search, right? There are many examples where, for very niche searches, those directory listings may be one of the first results. And so is there value in being one of the first results in the directory that's ranking number one? You want to look at it on a case by case basis. And that's where my answer, if someone's asking specifically, that's a partner of ours, I say send it our way. We'll look at it and we'll make our recommendations. But those directories add up. I'll also say that we've seen that AI search likes to see you in certain directories, and they may reference that as a source of authority, right, or expertise, even though lawyers know that typically that is not going to be necessarily indicative of things. So it is that balance. We always encourage people, if you've already been doing them, let's look at the performance, right? It's all about tracking it at the end of the day, but then also having a conversation that is ongoing about everything that we're looking at and trying to assess each one, because I agree, it is an important thing to some extent. And just because it's an important thing now doesn't mean it'll be an important thing down the line, or maybe it's more important. And then of the search terms and the firms. So I echo your thoughts on directories. They are not the most fun to deal with, but kind of a necessary evil at times.
Oh, yeah. And what I run into, which is interesting, is the marketer who's assigned to work on the directories and get quotes and talk to the teams. A lot of times they'll come back to me and say, like, oh, it's way too expensive. And then I'm like, well, what's the price? And then they're like 350 a month. And I'm like, that's not expensive in the games that we're playing. And a lot of times these are marketers who it's probably new to the legal industry and how much we spend in that respect. And so sometimes I see law firms like, oh, we didn't go after those because they were too expensive. And I'm like, well, let's talk actual real costs
Yeah.
because those are so beneficial. They really are.
Yeah. And some of it
Um,
depends, right, on like what, do we have holistically to invest? Something that is not always easy to say off the jump is like the idea of taking something that maybe is getting a positive ROI, but trying to assess, could we take that same level of resources and get a more significant positive ROI? So usually I always tell people, if you have the ability, let's try it, test it, track it, right? And then use that data to make the assessment over a reasonable period of time. Because you're right. And even what's expensive or not expensive can range in situations.
Well, what's interesting with legal directories is, and just really with a lot of types of marketing, is how difficult they are to track. And there's a lot of ambiguity in what we do. And that's the kind of the weird lesson I have to teach attorneys or and their teams is like, yeah, we're getting a paid listing on this directory because it'll help us. But the leads are going to be garbage. Like every lead we track through this website is going to be just junk. And I was like, I guarantee it. Like, I'll stake my career on it. We will not get a good lead from this website. I'm so hard about that. And so it's funny because, like, in marketing, a lot of times it seems like the game that we're playing isn't the game that we're playing, I guess. And you mentioned it earlier, the best lawyer, the AVA websites, and how you're listed there. It's just another algorithm, just like Google's that we're dealing with. And it absolutely has nothing to do with being a good lawyer or being a good law firm. It has everything to do with kind of how you play that game on that website. And it's just this kind of weird conundrum of marketing where what we're doing seems like we're doing it for one reason, but it's actually for another reason, but it's still going to benefit us. And it's just that there's so many things that are like that. And
I
tracking just like can't show
know.
you the real results
Ultimately
sometimes.
everybody's looking to track one thing and it's revenue, right? And so sometimes it's you can't pinpoint everything. I know that that is very applicable in things like radio or billboards or TV commercials, right? It is a very difficult thing to gauge, but hopefully it holistically helps. Similar to what you were saying, I was just on a call with a firm that we may partner up with who has a fantastic real world reputation, but hasn't done a good job of translating that digitally. And we're looking at the firms that are outperforming them. And it's a bunch of people they haven't heard of and people that are sending them the difficult cases. But it's just because that other firm has done some of these small things to teach that presence versus not looking at it really at all historically.
Yeah, I've seen a few law firms like that, strong offline presence, really poor digital presence. And you do need both. Like, you really can't get around like a strong Google business listing. Well, and let me ask you this because I had this conversation with somebody recently because I was going over an SEO report with them and it was all good news. The listing is doing good, the website is doing good, we're gaining in rankings. It's not perfect, but we're seeing growth and momentum. And they were like, well, that's interesting. They were like, what I wanted to talk with you about in this meeting is how many unqualified leads we're getting. And I told him, I was like, these things aren't unconnected. You're getting a lot of unqualified leads because of how well the list your Google business and your website is doing. Because when we tend to do well in Google, we tend to catch all things, all types of cases. Has that been your experience? Or like, can you truly have targeted SEO where you only get the kind of leads you want?
Yeah, that is something that you see, and I suppose it depends on when we're saying how targeted, really what we mean how targeted, because you can get very targeted with things, but of course, if you are trending in the right direction, it typically means that some of these less competitive keywords, right? Maybe they're less competitive because they're garbage leads or calls. That visibility, you may start obtaining that first. And it can be the positive spin is that it does mean that you are gaining traction, but it's not necessarily indicative of the end goal. So usually what we say when we're seeing that happen is, A, like there is value in having traffic come through to your site where Google is able to see that you are a source of authority and information. And if the leads that are coming through are truly that bad, and especially if it's a situation where we don't see a world where it could be a good one, maybe you want to mitigate call to actions on that page or take small steps. But it is a point where the first leads that you get through your digital presence are not likely to be home runs. And sometimes that's the deal that you have to make to get the good ones, but also making sure that you have a strong intake team in place. If you don't already have one, maybe that would be a good time to start thinking of some sort of process so that it is not your personal cell getting a phone call at like 11:30 p.m. at night that's a garbage lead. So it is, to your point, the positive spin is that it's typically something that means you're trending in the right direction. Of course, the caveat being that you continue to trend in the right direction and that doesn't remain the status quo.
I think back to, I heard this story, I think on Reddit, but there was a company called, and I don't know if they still exist, but it was like reputation.com. And they had ads on radio. I remember hearing them on the radio where they were basically saying like, we'll clean up your online reputation. And the story goes like this person, like this individual who posted this, had a photo out or something on the internet and they wanted it taken down. I don't think it was particularly lewd. They just didn't like it. And they called reputation.com, and ultimately like what they found out, they were just like an SEO company. They weren't like a reputation thing. It was just like an SEO play. And I always think of that, like, because in a way, the marketing was good. They were talking to like online reputation, SEO. I kind of see the connection. But they also like attracted people who thought it was a more specific type of service. Anyway, when it comes to something like accidents and injuries, that could be so many things. It could be somebody who was at fault for the accident. It could be somebody who slipped and fell and you don't take slip and fall cases. Assuming, that you don't have product liability pages on your site and getting traffic for that. But like even within the category of I was hurt and it wasn't my fault, there's so many different types of accidents. And I think the issue has always been like people don't know what they're looking for when they need an attorney like that. And they don't know, we know what keywords we want to rank for, but they don't know what keywords to use.
Yeah. To your point, that's also a great point. And I'll clarify one of the things that you want to do to bring the right traffic in. And what we do is you essentially want to teach the search engines, exactly who you are and who you're looking to help. So you certainly don't do yourself any favor if you don't want a slip and fall case, but you are putting tons of content on your site about a slip and fall case, right? And then getting very specific. Maybe one of the best things that you can do to find the right audience is to produce that very specific information. So, that element of your website and your Google business profile are those two opportunities to teach Google or really any of these AI search platforms as well, who you are and who you can help. So being intentional about the information that you provide, I think is huge. And I almost forget what that original question was that you asked, but I think that was along the lines of what you were thinking, because it comes back to information at the end of the day.
I guess, and maybe I need to sit down and like write my thoughts out. But like when it comes to marketing, my thoughts are if you're good at it, you're good at it. And if you're good at attracting leads, you'll attract all kinds of leads, including those you don't want. And so unqualified leads, I guess I'm thinking aren't necessarily bad. They
No, I
could be,
do agree.
yeah.
I also agree. And look, before you can rank for slip and fall, right? If you're killing it, you're going to show up for a injury lawyer search term, right? That is a great problem to have. If we're ranking number one for injury lawyer, personal injury, car accident, whatever, and you're getting a bunch of unqualified leads coming through, because I promise you the good ones are coming with that as well. So yes, to your point, it's a great problem to have if Google views you as such an authoritative presence that you're collecting a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the other part, like the other side of SEO that a lot of attorneys don't think about when they're just getting started, which is like how, like once it's working, like how important, and you already mentioned it, like phones and intake are. Because if you don't have somebody on the phones collecting information, documenting, you're a leaky bucket. And Anyway, like, so it's one of those things like if you go after SEO and you do really well, you will get a lot of leads. And if when you start getting a lot of leads, you have to have ways of handling them and that staffing an intake team. And I feel like attorneys don't realize that or try to replace a person with AI or something.
Yeah. And look, it's also part of the reason why digital or just SEO in general isn't for every firm out there, right? You may be a very boutique firm and you collect all your cases through referrals and you're not really looking to grow or necessarily need to implement all these things. So that's always part of what that initial conversation that we like to have is like, are we even a good fit? Because in situations where we may not be a good fit, even if we bring somebody on, we partnered with them, we achieve all of these goals. If that's not really what the firm is looking for, then it doesn't matter. And ultimately, it does nobody any good. So I agree. But it also, it's just not for everybody. For everybody listening, Tiffany's birthday was yesterday. It was yesterday as well. Happy belated birthday.
Are you accusing me of being hungover or something? No, I'm not. That's too bad. I did go out to like a really nice little noodle place in Culpeper. You're local, so you'll know
Yeah.
where Culpeper is. Yeah. Oh, it was so good. And like my husband like can't he was going to go out to dinner tomorrow and I was in the kitchen, he listening to him cancel a dinner he was planning on attending tomorrow because he was still full today from what we ate last night. So I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like
Well,
it was really good though. Yeah.
as a local, I'd love to hear that. What was the spot?
Oh, okay. I'll have to look it up because I don't remember the name. Like he picked
Yeah.
it. I like to shove my brain off after work. I'm just like, just put a blindfold on and like husband lead me through life. You know, I'm that kind of person sometimes. But no, it was delicious though. I'll look it up after we get off the podcast and
Yeah.
tell you it was so good.
Yeah.
Do you go out to Culpeper out this way very often?
I grew up in Northern Virginia out in Manassas, and we're getting so niche now
Oh,
for anybody. Any Northern Virginians are locked in right now. I grew up in Manassas, so I have a lot of family out in that area and just the general, I don't even know that you'd call it Northern Virginia area down to Richmond, that whole type of thing. I'm all up in everywhere there every once in a while, but spend the majority of my time in DC or as far as the metro will take me.
kind of want to boo you for that, but boo, like DC. Yeah, honestly, I'm like kind of the opposite. I can't think of the last time I actually been into DC. I would have to sit here and think about it because it's probably been like 2 years, and surely it was for a concert or something. I remember driving into DC once. We're not talking about marketing anymore. Everyone listen to the podcast, super bummed. I drove into DC once for a concert and didn't plan parking in advance because I was young and dumb, I guess. And got to the concert venue, could not find parking like within miles. And we were so late at that point and the tickets were cheap. I was like, just let's go home. Let's go home. I'm giving up.
Oh,
So
well,
bad.
you really turned around. Yeah, the parking out here is nuts. The worst purchase that I made post grad was buying a car because I quickly realized that not just the cost of like having it out here in general, but the time it takes to park. Oftentimes, when you're driving somewhere, you might as well have just walked. So I feel you need to, they got apps, they got all that stuff these days, but Metro next time.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
Yeah, the Metro is pretty solid. Like I've been on a few subways and Metro is definitely the best. I'll hype it. It's not gross. New York was gross. Like
Better than New
no.
York. Better than New York.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely better than New York.
Yeah, 100%. I'm trying to think like how are we going to bring this back to marketing? So what are your plans for this year? Like are maybe not necessarily Blue Shark, but are you doing anything special, going to events, speaking, anything like that?
Yeah, the past couple of years for me, I've really enjoyed being up on stage and doing speaking. For me, one of those things that I'm passionate about, similar to what we were talking about earlier, I think that there is just so much, obviously, that firms can do to compete, but I think there's so much that firms can do themselves, whether they're working with an agency or not, that they don't realize because they don't have that information to do so. I like to go out and speak on a lot of that stuff, as well as more in depth strategies. And that's going to be the case for this next year as well. I think I'll be on stage out at NTL towards the end of January if anybody's going to be out there. And hopefully 7 or 8 times throughout the year would be great, something like that. And then on the road, who knows how many times, we'll see. But yeah, there's anybody who's listening who's also attending conferences knows that there are more conferences out there than needed, but plenty of trips. A great way to see cool places. And then that's definitely the biggest thing for me, I would suppose, this year.
Yeah. I've said this on the podcast before, and I feel like my listeners are going to get tired of hearing me, but I'm doing 4 events this year, and I'm really looking forward to it because I need to get out of the house more. Like I work from home, my whole team basically work from home, and it's just gets to be like cabin fever a little bit. I always think of the Muppets Treasure Island movie.
And you'll have to let me know where you're going to be when you mentioned the PILMA for AI or the AI one, and that's out in Florida, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's out in Florida.
and any other
I
one.
think that I'm gonna try to go to the Legal Marketing Association one in New Orleans.
Mhm.
And then I think I'm registered for the Mardi Gras one. And
Mhm.
confusingly, it's in San Diego. Like, why'd you name your event Mardi Gras and put it in San Diego? For real.
Once
Like,
you go, you'll know why. That's Bob's event. When you go, you'll know.
well, I know it's Mardi Gras themed, but it's just like, why wouldn't you put it in New Orleans?
Good
This thing.
question.
Yeah. He must just live out there, which I get it. But yeah, so that's what I'm planning on going to this year. And I'm speaking at a mastermind virtually and actually speaking virtually like a few times. And probably the GLM summit, we'll see. I always am like, it's a coin toss if I think Ben and Brian are going to let me back in. Because I feel
Well,
like I always show up to the events and act really annoying and I leave and they're just like, oh my
I'll say in the times that I've heard you, but also everything that you talk about, I know you're active on LinkedIn. I really appreciate being able not only just to like see your thought process, but see the thought process and also know that thought process is very sound. It's reasoned. It's all the right things because people like you, when we're able to work with firms that like have you, it makes our lives a lot easier because we can only do so much as an agency without that collaboration. And the ability to collaborate with the firm is so big for our ability to not just like do well, but do beyond that point. And so I would encourage anybody to go listen to you because I'm sure that is going to be great information. Obviously, if they're
God.
listening to this podcast, they know that.
Oh yeah, if they're this far into the episode, I guess. Well, hopefully.
That's the
I
noodle conversation. Then they're fans.
yeah. No, everyone's wondering where this amazing noodle place in Culpeper is. I need to go leave a review and hype them up because it was really that good. And I really appreciate that. When I first started fractional CMOing, I wasn't sure how the vendors would take it. It's a newish thing. I mean, definitely new to me and kind of my corner of the world. And by and large, like just what I figured out is, I can be a resource that helps where the SEO companies can't because scope is limited. And generally, I haven't really had bad experiences with too many vendors, except the ones that are obviously not doing really well when I join an account. Those people usually kind of hate me.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah,
you know, you
the
can't
real
hide
ones like you
success.
guys, yeah.
You can't hide success, right? And ultimately having more ability like to collaborate and create that success because ultimately if you're coming in and you're uncovering things that aren't working well, it was just a matter of time anyways until those things get uncovered and even the ability if they aren't working well to maybe collaborate and figure out what needs to happen in order to fix it. It's a win-win because we are all on the same team when it comes to that stuff and we all have the same goals. So that's why we view that as super, super helpful.
Yeah. Well, and I try not to be competitive. Like, I feel like I try to make those days behind me because I've always been kind of a competitive person, but there are so many egos in marketing that, like, it's just give it up. Just give it up and treat it like a sports team or a basketball team. Like, everyone's working towards the same goal. And I don't even care who has the ideas these days. It's kind of a shameful thing as a marketer to admit, but I'm perfectly happy implementing somebody else's ideas just as long as we're getting something done and we're getting the results in. So yeah, and it's just nicer when you can collaborate and be friends with everyone. I like it. Well, thank you so much, Will, for being on the podcast today. And I'm trying to think of other questions to ask you. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to go over?
No, well, you know what? I would be curious to hear what you have found makes an agency a good relationship or a poor relationship? Are there things that you have seen that you really want an agency or just any vendor to bring to the table?
For me, man, that is weirdly a hard question to answer. I mean, for companies like Blue Shark and some of the other ones, like honestly, like I'm happy with what you guys are doing. And a lot of times the obstacles I'm overcoming is trying to teach the law firm owners like this is what an SEO company does. What they're saying is right here. Let's just continue to support them. Honestly, that's kind of mostly what I'm doing is like training the law firm owners and not like whipping the SEO company into shape. It's kind of a shameful confession. It's only in instances where I step in and the company isn't doing what they're supposed to be, the results are really poor, and the company's been or the vendor's been doing the same thing for a long time. And if that's the situation, I try to change that really quick and bring in a vendor like Blue Shark or like somebody else that I trust and does what they're supposed to do. So like my expectations are pretty mild because really I just want you to be an SEO company. And that's
Yeah.
a lot of companies do great at that.
That makes sense. And I can appreciate that. And I'll say, to be fair, at times it can go both ways where I think that it does fall on the agency to set the right expectations, whether they're set and maintained, because who knows how people in 7 months from now, right, is who knows what's remembered from those initial calls. But I do think that it's important as an agency to set an expectation, because if an agency tells somebody that 3 months is going to move mountains, right? Even if you're trending in the right direction, I wouldn't say it's always wrong if we're 5 months in and things may be going well. But if that expectation hadn't been set, that mountains would be moved. And I think that's even another thing to point towards from you, right? If maybe somebody's out there and they're saying that you can do X, Y, and Z and it doesn't add up across the board, right? Those types of things that are not on the agency or on the firm to know whether they're being told things or not that are unreasonable.
Yeah. Well, there's so much nuance too in this space, and I learn shit every day. So, like, I shouldn't cuss, but I always forget that when I'm recording the podcast. But I'll learn a new SEO thing that I just spent 2 meetings ago arguing with the vendor about, and all of a sudden I feel bad. But this is an ever evolving space, and we just got to be open and talk and communicate and push back and give. Yeah, when you're working with an SEO, nobody's perfect, but as long as we're doing things. And that's primarily what I try to do is just make sure everyone continues to do things.
The
So,
strategy that you're looking at, I tell everybody, the strategy that we're looking at right now is going to be different than the strategy that we're looking at a year from now. Because if nothing else, we'll have more information. But even all of the things like AI in particular, it evolves so quickly. You can only reasonably predict to a certain point. And the most important thing is that as you learn the information and you see the data, you adjust. So I fully agree there.
I have a few AI marketing plans I made roughly 12 months ago. I'm super embarrassed about now. I was like, oh, it's so wrong. That was the best of what we knew at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Will. Where do you want people to go to look you up to learn more about you?
Yeah, obviously LinkedIn's a great spot. Last name spelled McCreight. Feel free to shoot me over a message on there, connect with me, whatever. Or if you want to set up some time to chat, of course, you can go to our website, bluesharkdigital.com, blue spelled BLU, sharkdigital.com, and fill out a request to speak with us. And you can mention my name and we'll get in touch. But otherwise, just connect with me. Come find me out in the wild. Like I said earlier, I'll be the tall guy probably at the conference. So looking forward to connecting with everybody out there.
And you need to get some meta glasses. You'll have a real good footage of every event, probably.
From a
Nice
point of
high
view of
perspective. Yeah.
above everybody's heads. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, and look forward to seeing you sometime this year at some event, I'm sure. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me,
Bye.
Tiffany. Bye.